The invitation lay crumpled in her trembling hands. Claire Matthews had been staring at it for 3 days straight, tucked inside her notebook, hidden from everyone, especially her father. It wasn't just any party. It was the annual winter charity gala, a place where the wealthiest of the city gathered in their sparkling gowns and black suits, sipping champagne and snapping photos under dazzling chandeliers. Her classmates would be there, draped in luxury, accompanied by their equally polished parents. And Claire only had her dad, Thomas, the school janitor. She pressed the invitation flat against the desk and whispered to herself, "If I show up alone, they'll eat me alive. If I don't go, they'll know I'm scared." It wasn't the first time Claire had been caught in this invisible war. She lived in a neighborhood most of her peers didn't even drive past. Her clothes weren't designer, her shoes weren't imported, and while the other girls posted photos of brunches in fancy cafes, Claire spent her weekends helping her dad scrub the school gym floors. Still, she had earned her place in that elite private school through scholarship and grades. But none of that mattered when the whispers started. She remembered last week too clearly. The smirks, the cruel laughter when one of the boys said, "Don't bring your janitor daddy, Claire. We don't want him mopping the dance floor." Everyone laughed, except her. Now, the thought came to her like a spark, crazy, ridiculous, impossible, but maybe brave. She clutched the invitation, marched into the kitchen where her dad was rinsing out an old coffee mug, his hands calloused and red from years of hard labor. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling more than she wanted. He turned, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, kiddo? You look serious." She sucked in a breath, her heart pounding. "Will you be my date to the party?" The mug slipped in his hands, clattering in the sink. For a long second, silence hung heavy between them. Thomas blinked as though he hadn't heard her right. "Claire, honey, you know what I do. You know who I am." He let out a breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "That party isn't for people like me." But she wasn't backing down. "It's for people like us," she whispered. "It's for families. And you're my family. You're my dad." Her words sank into him deeper than she realized. He turned away, pretending to busy himself with the dish towel, but his throat burned. Thomas Matthews had spent 17 years working as the school janitor, sacrificing every dream he'd once had to raise his daughter alone after her mother walked out. He never complained, not once, but deep down, he carried a quiet shame. He saw the stares from teachers, parents, and students when he pushed his mop down the halls. He had learned to keep his head low. But now, his little girl was asking him to walk into the glittering heart of the city as her guest. That night, after Claire went to bed, Thomas sat at the small kitchen table, the invitation glowing under the weak bulb. He thought of the laughter, the whispers, the humiliation his daughter already carried. Was he about to make it worse? Or was this his chance to finally show her that dignity wasn't about money or titles? The decision came slowly, painfully, but firmly. He would go. The night of the gala arrived too quickly. Claire stood before the mirror, adjusting the simple blue dress they had found at a thrift shop. It wasn't new, but it hugged her well, and she had stitched tiny beads into the neckline to give it a touch of sparkle. Her dad emerged from his room, wearing his one and only suit. It was old, a little too snug at the shoulders, but freshly pressed. He had even polished his shoes until they shone. Claire smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "You look perfect." He chuckled nervously. "Perfect is a strong word, kiddo. Let's hope I don't trip over my own feet." When they arrived at the Grand Hotel, the marble steps glittered under strings of golden lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance, chauffeurs opening doors for women in gowns that shimmered like water. Claire's hand gripped her father's tightly. Every step felt heavier as whispers rose around them. "Isn't that the janitor? What's he doing here? Poor girl. Couldn't she find anyone else?" Claire's cheeks flushed hot, but Thomas held his head high, shoulders squared. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a man with a mop. He was her father, her date, her protector. He guided her inside with quiet pride. At first, it was unbearable. Classmates sneered, some openly pointing. Claire's so-called friends avoided her, huddling together and giggling behind their manicured hands. She thought she might collapse from the weight of humiliation. But then, something unexpected happened. The host of the evening, Mr. Grayson, one of the wealthiest men in the city, took the stage to welcome the guests. His eyes swept the room, and for a fleeting second, landed on Thomas. Recognition flickered. He paused, smiled slightly, and then launched into his speech about community, generosity, and humility. Later, as everyone mingled, Mr. Grayson himself walked over. Conversations around them stopped. All eyes widened as the richest man in the room extended his hand to the janitor. "Thomas Matthews," he said warmly. "Haven't seen you in years. You probably don't remember, but back when I was at Jefferson High, you were the one who helped me after I slipped in the hallway. You carried me to the nurse's office, waited until I was okay. I never forgot that kindness." The room went silent. Claire's eyes widened, stunned. Her father swallowed hard, nodding awkwardly. "Just doing my job, sir." Grayson laughed. "There's nothing, just, about kindness. It changes people." He turned to Claire. "You must be his daughter. You're lucky. You've got a man of honor by your side." Whispers shifted. The sneers softened. Suddenly, Thomas wasn't just the janitor. He was a man remembered, respected, honored in front of the city's elite. Throughout the night, people approached, some curious, others genuinely moved. Claire's classmates watched in silence as the spotlight turned away from them, landing on the father they had mocked. She held her dad's arm tighter, her chest swelling with pride. But the most shocking moment came near the end of the evening. The auctioneer announced a surprise guest speaker, someone chosen by Mr. Grayson himself to represent the theme of humility and hard work. To everyone's astonishment, Grayson gestured toward Thomas. "Would you mind saying a few words?" The microphone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his hands. Thomas looked out at the sea of polished faces, at his daughter's shining eyes, and took a shaky breath. "I don't belong here," he began honestly. "At least, that's what I thought when my daughter asked me to come tonight. I'm a janitor. I clean your kids' classrooms, your hallways, your gyms. I've heard the whispers. I've felt the stares. But standing here, I realize something. Maybe I do belong. Because every one of us, whether we're sweeping floors or running companies, has the chance to teach our children what matters. And if there's one thing I've taught my daughter, I hope it's this. Dignity isn't about the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's about the way you treat people when no one is watching." The room erupted in applause. Genuine, thunderous applause. Claire's eyes blurred with tears, her heart soaring. For once, she wasn't ashamed. She was proud. So proud she thought she might burst. As the night drew to a close, people approached them not with sneers, but with respect. One woman whispered to Claire, "You're lucky to have him." Another man patted Thomas on the shoulder, calling him the most authentic man in the room. When they finally stepped out into the crisp night air, Claire leaned against her father's arm, her voice soft. "Dad, you were amazing." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Nah. I just told the truth." But as the city lights glowed above them and the laughter of the party faded behind, Claire knew it was more than that. Her dad hadn't just been her date to the party. He had been her hero. And maybe, just maybe, everyone else finally saw him the way she always had.